Hello and welcome to a special episode of Media Snack Meets. Today I'm joined by two marketing leaders from Mars. Rob Rakowitz, who is the Director of Global Media at Mars, and Antonio Scannapieco, who is Global Commercial Director at Mars. In old currency, that was kind of media and procurement, right? So welcome, guys. Thank you for taking the time out to speak to us at Media Snack. I know you're incredibly busy at the moment. You have recently announced one of the most high-profile global media reviews of the year. Congratulations on that. So I know that you're really busy. For obvious reasons, we're not allowed to spend a great deal of time talking about that today. But what I would like to do is interrogate perhaps some of your thinking in terms of getting your organization ready to go to review. So what transformational journeys and agenda have you undertaken to get to this stage so that you can go to market with a really progressive and clearly thought out blueprint, if that's okay? Absolutely. Yeah? Great. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start actually with your CMO's marketing vision. So Andrew Clark, who is CMO, he's been in the role I think for about a year, just over a year, gave a brilliant address at the Marketing Society's conference at the back end of last year, where he shared his marketing philosophy, okay, for Mars. And he talked about three key points. He said it's all about empowering his teams. It's about trusting his agencies, which I thought was a brilliant sentiment. And thirdly, he talked about trusting the data. So how has that agenda influenced the kind of the ambition for media at Mars, as you guys have designed it?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are really great themes, and the beautiful thing is that the shift on that thinking has been really informed by what we've been seeing both from a media perspective and a creative one, and data. Look, ultimately at the end of the day, what we want to do is make sure that our associates are making decisions on behalf of the business, spending the money as if it were their own. That is the key thing that we want to do, is be able to make sure that everybody is driving growth. The other bit is just making sure that we place mutuality front and center, that we make sure that we're driving the right partnerships with the agencies, as well as the media owners and the partners that we choose to collaborate with in terms of charting that journey forward and what the future is. And then we are an evidence-based marketer. We thrive on insight, innovation, as well as investment. And insight and data is a key part to understanding how reach drives conversion and what the business uplift is. So that's absolutely in line with where we've been with media and where we're going forward.
And was that agenda, was that a big shift from perhaps where you were 2 or 3 years ago? Or has that been a gentle evolution into kind of a slightly more progressive, data-driven vision for media and marketing?
Sure. I think that it's been a good evolution. So it's not like we're flipping a switch and all of a sudden the DNA is switching over. I think if anything, what we've noticed is that we've got pockets of brilliance in different markets and different brands, and we've been really inspired by actually seeing great work coming out of Australia, the US, China, UK, Germany, and it's been really, really great work. Now, the challenge that we have is that change isn't even.
Yeah.
And really what we're trying to do here is make sure that we inspire the network internally within Mars, and whether it's a marketer or somebody who's in charge of looking after media, or whether it's the agency partners, to really embrace this future that we're setting out.
So Antonio, what I'm really interested in is to understand how, from a commercial perspective, you can balance the need to drive efficiency. You're a $1 billion plus spender, with the requirement to drive effectiveness from a media perspective. How do you find that equilibrium within Mars?
So I think that partnership is key. So we need to have our partnership and supply relationship management with our agencies as well. So when we sit with our agencies, we're not only asking for the cheapest cost, but we want to ask for a cost that is, or for a product that is going to deliver the best effectiveness as well. And internally, we need to be all aligned. So the partnership between media, commercial procurement, and market research, and all the different functions within the organization is really important, because we just take the compromises and make sure that we balance up both KPIs. So the hygiene stuff needs to be there, but obviously we want to go further, and that's what Rob just said. So we want to drive this transformation to make sure that we use the data in the right way, and we use the data at the core of what we do.
And how do you begin to make that change within an organisation that has multiple divisions? You operate at a global, regional, local level. I mean, how do you begin to kind of imprint that level of change in an organisation that is so multi-layered?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge challenge, and I think that's probably where I spend most of my time, and I know that Antonio does as well. It's just this idea of managing vision and purpose. So being clear about, like, look, what does good actually look like? What is the change that we're seeing in the marketplace, and why do we actually need to evolve? And why is this intrinsic to our growth agenda? So that, in terms of just being very, very clear about the change that you want to trigger, the real business rationale. And the other element on this is just really building that idea of, starting to get everybody pointed in the right direction and pulling in the same direction. So making sure that we're clear about what is the growth challenge and what's media's role for each of the business units that we have. How do the actual local units actually then contribute into it? Where's our learning agenda? What are the key priorities that we have to deliver against? And what is the segment's unique contribution, and what's the local unit? Because it's very fine for us to come up with these platitudes and these really, really big strategic ambitions, but everybody needs stake in it. And that's been the really beautiful thing that we've been able to do across the board in terms of bringing together our research folks, our commercial guys, our marketing guys, is just building that shared ambition, and everybody recognizing this is a shared transformation agenda. It's not just something that lives up at the enterprise and is a 5-year thing, but this is stuff that actually needs to be landed in this year's campaign.
It helps, right, when your kind of senior marketing and procurement commercial stakeholders see media as a lever for growth, right, as opposed to a cost. So.
Well, Andrew has been really good, and all the CMOs to really embrace this, but I think that's also been experts, subject matter experts. So Rob and myself working together, knowing what we can do with media and how media can do more for the organization, and then building the right business cases, and then sitting with the right level of management across all the partnerships internally and also externally. So with the 70s report and internal surveys and all these kind of things, we were able just to really say, well, look, here's where we are today, and here is how much more we can do with media. So when we invest those media dollars, they can return more into the organization. So it's not just driving the lower cost. Again, it's about driving growth.
And from a media perspective, as a media kind of leader, has that transition in terms of narrative been easy, been relatively straightforward?
No, it hasn't. I mean, I've been on the journey with Mars now for roughly 3.5 years, and it's been, and it takes a while to sort of convince people. And when you're in an evidence-based organization, people aren't going to take your first word at recommendation and run off with it. They want to actually see the proof. The beautiful thing is that we've had people who've been willing to experiment, willing to innovate, and then we've gotten the proof and saying, look, not all reach is created equally. So it's been really, we've been very fortunate that we have basically a book of business, a book of markets that we can actually go back into with these provocations, and people are willing to pick it up. And that's the beautiful thing is that there's a lot of pull within the organization to actually go forward. This isn't something, again, where we're cascading it down from the bottom. We're having a lot of provocation from the markets that want to do this amazing work. And that's what's really inspiring here is that, when you talk about driving this transformation, it's push and it's pull. And that's what the beauty of the Mars system is.
That's brilliant, brilliant. And kind of one final area that I want to just kind of delve into a little bit is actually the way that you two work together. It's somewhat rare in our experience that commercial procurement and marketing and media are kind of so seamlessly integrated and collaborate so kind of smoothly, if you like. Has that always been a case in Mars, or have you had to find that kind of balance in your roles and responsibilities because of the transformational program and obviously now going into the review?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very fortunate because I walked in new to the organization, and the typical tensions that you would normally, stereotype between marketing and commercial, they weren't there. I'm also very fortunate to have such an amazing partner to be able to drive this agenda forward, because it isn't easy. You are going to hit a lot of snags. There is going to be tension at times, either between functions or at different levels of the organization, and it's been very, very. We've been very fortunate to have that collaboration and that shared vision for what can media do, and how do we actually start to look at it differently.
I think that the main two things that are making this partnership really, really possible. So one is we both really understand what media is about. So Rob understands exactly what the cost perspective is, what the finance challenges are internally. So he works also collaboratively to really drive that forward. So we work very seamlessly to make sure that our KPIs are actually aligned, our vision is aligned, so we don't step into each other's foot, but actually we complement each other and make sure that we just drive the same thing on both sides. So when we show up to finance or to procurement or to marketing or to market research or to whomever, we're saying one voice and we're delivering one message. So I think that's the key.
That's brilliant. But that sense of collaboration and kind of being aligned in terms of a direction for the business, that comes from the culture and the values inherent within Mars, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're lucky to work in such a principle-driven organization. Our 5 principles really allow us to show up in the right way, and I think our unique collaboration and partnership allows us to really activate differently in the marketplace, whether it's with media owners or with agencies, and then also internally. So I actually think that the 5 principles is something that we embody on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think that that's a glue that brings all of us together and enable this type of transformation. So when you think about quality or mutuality with our agencies and with our key partners, responsibility, so each one of us is responsible for the actions of the entire company, so that's really important. Freedom, so we have freedom to make decisions within a framework and these kind of things. And we have efficiency, so efficiency is really important for us to really drive good cost, but also like with responsibility to drive growth. So I think that's a glue that brings the entire company together. So and just Rob and I work with the same goals in mind.
And so those values aren't just inherent in the way that you operate internally. It's also the way that you're looking to operate, and presumably you do already with your current agency partners, and will be something that you'll be looking to interrogate with the agency partners that you'll be looking as part of this review, right? That will be part of the process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think we've been very proud of the media journey that we've been on. We've been very proud that it's so rooted in the 5 principles, and we are going to be 100% invested in making sure that those things actually move together.
But this transformational journey, and this is the bit that I think is really interesting. How do you begin, right? How do you, we're a massive organization, 80,000 people kind of work at Mars. Media and marketing is becoming more and more prominent within the corporate agenda. You two are the principal stakeholders when it comes to kind of global media. How do you begin? Where do you start a transformational program and agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. So being an evidence-based organization and also being multi-segment and then also locally based, I mean, we've got to start with the body of evidence that we have, which is literally turning around to our stakeholders and finding out what works and what doesn't. We were able to do internal and external benchmarks, came up with a lot of the analytics through the 7Ts framework, which has been really helpful in us framing some of the marketplace needs and what the actual units need, and making sure that those are priorities and work streams that we can actually advance. So it's been really helpful in terms of taking stock of what are the challenges and what are the opportunities and what are the organizational needs, and then being able to then figure out what is the strategic framework that I'm going to work against, and how does this actually improve not only sort of what we deliver to the rest of the organization and what growth we deliver to the business, but also how does this improve on media IQ?
Yeah. And Antonio, how easy was that benchmarking system and framework? How easy was that to sell in to the business. Once you'd worked out where you were and you'd identified your strengths from a media management perspective, and then all areas where you needed to find improvement, how easy was it to get traction in the business?
Well, I think so the first thing is making sure that you drive the case for change, and you create the appetite of the top management. So that's what Rob and I said. Well, as Rob said, we are a big organization, many segments, many markets, local decision making. So we need to understand where we were at. And once we collected all the information with all the media spend, that is a big chunk of our total spend. As a company, we said, okay, let's go through the 70s, let's assess where we're good at, where we need to improve, and then that makes a no-brainer that is a need for change. So when we go to the organization and we explain the reasons why, it's kind of a very logical sequence, and it's a very logical thing to do, that it's very difficult to say no.
And we've been very fortunate that we've had stakeholder buy-in and endorsement along the way, whether it was from the folks who actually helped us sort of commission the work, and the folks who have actually participated in the work, because it's that vested inputting into this from a feedback perspective. They're taking me seriously as a stakeholder or as a transformation driver, and so I actually have a vested interest in making sure that this actually advances and it's a success.
And presumably that internal reflection has now enabled you, as you kind of prepare for this review that you're about to go live with, to create a narrative and a very, very clear perspective as to how you see media internally, the role that it plays in driving business outcomes, and also the role that you're looking to find and fulfill with agency partners outside, right? I mean, that whole journey has helped you drive that narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and look, the transformation agenda it's really around sort of, look, how do we structure, how do we look at the world in terms of media around markets and brands, and then also what is the role for data and technology. It's more than just sort of our structure and the way that we approach the marketplace with the agencies, and it's really about making sure that we've got a full-on view in terms of how do we need to look at media differently in order to drive growth in a more turbulent time.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time out today. Rob, Antonio, I've personally found it absolutely fascinating. Thank you for joining me today on this special episode of Media Snack Meets. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, it's good. We're going to wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay. How do we wrap up these things, by the way?
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's good. Right.